What do you do when the person who holds your heart refuses to see you? For Ezra Caldwell, that question burned every night as he stood in the shadows of his boss's life, waiting for a glance that never came, until the night it did and everything he thought he knew shattered. Ezra's fingers trembled as he adjusted the coffee machine in the dimly lit office kitchen. It was 9 p.m., and the San Francisco skyline glittered through the glass walls of Harper & Stone, a marketing firm where dreams were pitched and egos clashed. He was 28, a graphic designer with a quiet intensity, his dark eyes always searching for meaning in the chaos of deadlines. His days were spent sketching bold campaigns, but his nights, they belonged to her. Lila Navarro, the 32-year-old creative director who stormed through the office like a hurricane, leaving everyone breathless. Lila was a force, sharp-witted, with a cascade of red hair she'd recently cropped to her chin, a decision that sparked whispers among the staff. She was all business, her heels clicking with purpose, her voice cutting through boardroom noise like a blade. But to Ezra, she was more. A puzzle he couldn't solve, a fire he couldn't touch. For 6 months, she'd summoned him to her office after hours, always with a new project, a new demand. Redesign this logo, Ezra. Make it sing. Fix this pitch deck by morning. He'd stay late, fueled by her intensity, by the way her fingers brushed his when she handed him files, by the fleeting moments when her guard seemed to slip. Tonight was no different. The office was empty, save for the hum of the air conditioning and the faint glow of Lila's desk lamp. Ezra knocked softly on her door, clutching a tablet with his latest mock-up. "Come in," she called, her voice low, almost weary. He stepped inside, and there she was, leaning back in her chair, a glass of bourbon in hand, her scarf draped carelessly over the armrest. She didn't look up. She never did. What did Ezra feel in that moment, watching her avoid his gaze? Was it hope, twisting like a knife, or something heavier? Resignation? He set the tablet down, his voice steady despite the ache in his chest. "The new campaign visuals. I tweaked the color palette like you asked." Lila nodded, her eyes fixed on the glass. "Good. Leave it. I'll review tomorrow." Her tone was clipped, but there was a tremor in it, a crack Ezra couldn't ignore. He lingered, searching for a reason to stay, to break through the wall she'd built. Why did she call him here night after night, only to keep him at arm's length? What was she afraid of? "Anything else?" he asked, his voice softer now, testing the waters. She swirled the bourbon, the ice clinking. "No. Go home, Ezra." But her fingers tightened around the glass, and for a split second, her eyes flickered toward him, then away like she'd been burned. That glance, brief as it was, set his pulse racing. It was the first time in months she'd come close to seeing him. What did it mean? Was it a mistake, or a door cracking open? Ezra left the office that night with questions swirling in his mind. He walked through the foggy streets of the Mission District, where murals glowed under streetlights and the air smelled of tacos and sea salt. His apartment, a cramped studio with sketchbooks scattered across the floor, felt emptier than usual. He sank onto his couch, replaying that fleeting glance. What held Lila back? Was it the weight of her role, the whispers about her in the office, or something deeper? Something about who she was or who she couldn't let herself be? The next day, the office buzzed with tension. A major client, a tech startup called Nexus, was threatening to pull their account unless Harper & Stone delivered a groundbreaking campaign by the end of the week. Lila was relentless, barking orders, her energy electric but frayed. Ezra watched her from his desk, noticing the shadows under her eyes, the way her hands shook when she thought no one was looking. He wanted to ask her what was wrong, to reach out, but the office was a battlefield, and he was just a soldier in her war. During a late afternoon meeting, Lila presented Ezra's designs to the team. "This is what we're pitching," she said, her voice steady now, commanding. The room nodded, impressed, but Ezra felt a pang of invisibility. She hadn't mentioned his name, hadn't even glanced his way. Why did she lean on him so heavily yet keep him in the shadows? Was it just professional distance? Or was there something personal she couldn't face? That night, she called him to her office again. This time, the bourbon was gone, replaced by a stack of papers and a laptop glowing with data. "We're behind," she said, her voice tight. "Nexus wants more. I need you to pull an all-nighter. Can you handle it?" Ezra nodded, but something in him snapped. "Why me, Lila?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. "You always ask me to stay. Why?" She froze, her pen hovering over a notepad. For a moment, the air between them crackled. What was she thinking? Was she weighing her words? Or was she as lost as he was? "You're good at what you do," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's all." But it wasn't all. Ezra felt it in the way her shoulders tensed, in the way she still wouldn't meet his eyes. He wanted to push, to demand answers, but the weight of her silence held him back. Instead, he sat down, opened his laptop, and got to work, the hum of the city outside their only companion. What was Lila hiding? And why did Ezra keep coming back, night after night, chasing a connection that might never be his? As the week wore on, the pressure from Nexus mounted. Ezra barely slept, his days blurring into nights of revisions and coffee runs. Lila was a whirlwind, her presence both inspiring and exhausting. Yet, in those late hours, Ezra began to notice cracks in her armor. Moments when her voice softened, when her hand lingered near his as they reviewed designs. Was she letting him in? Or was he imagining it? What did those fleeting touches mean to someone like Lila, who seemed to live behind a fortress of control? One evening, as rain streaked the office windows, Lila called Ezra in earlier than usual. The office was quiet, the team long gone. She stood by the window, her silhouette framed against the city's glow. "I need your perspective," she said, her voice unusually vulnerable. "Not on the campaign. On me." Ezra's heart stopped. What was she asking? He stepped closer, cautious, like approaching a deer in the wild. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice low. Lila turned, her eyes catching the light, but still not meeting his. "Do you think I'm cold? Unapproachable?" Her words hung in the air, fragile and raw. Ezra wanted to say no, to tell her she was everything brilliant, fierce, human, but something held him back. What did she need from him in that moment? Was it honesty or reassurance? "I think you're guarded," he said carefully. "But I don't think it's because you're cold. I think it's because you're protecting something." Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time, she looked at him, really looked, and Ezra felt the world tilt. Her eyes, green and stormy, held a mix of fear and longing. What was she protecting? Her career? Her heart? Or something she hadn't even admitted to herself? The moment broke when her phone buzzed, a harsh reminder of the world outside. She turned away, answering with her usual sharpness, and Ezra was left reeling. What had just happened? Had he crossed a line, or had she? The next day, the office was chaos. Nexus had sent a scathing email, demanding a complete overhaul of the campaign. Lila was on edge, snapping at everyone, but Ezra noticed something new. She was watching him. During meetings, her eyes would drift his way, lingering just long enough to make his skin prickle. Was she testing him? Or was she finally seeing him? That night, as they worked side by side, Ezra took a risk. "Lila, what's going on with you?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. "You're different lately. I can feel it." She stiffened, her fingers pausing on her keyboard. "You don't know me, Ezra," she said, but there was no bite in her words, only exhaustion. "You think you do, but you don't." "Then let me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Let me know you." For a moment she didn't move. Then, slowly, she turned to face him. Her eyes locked onto his, and Ezra felt a jolt, like she was seeing him for the first time. What was she thinking? Was she afraid of what she felt, or of what it could cost her? The moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Marcus, a senior account manager, his face grim. "Lila, we've got a problem. Nexus is threatening to sue if we don't deliver by tomorrow." The air shifted, and Lila was back in control, her vulnerability buried. "Get the team in here. Now," she ordered, and Marcus scrambled to obey. Ezra watched her transform. The woman he'd glimpsed moments ago vanishing behind her armor. But that look, she'd seen him, and he wasn't going to let her hide again. What would it take for Lila to let her walls down? And what would Ezra risk to find out? The office became a war room as the deadline loomed. Ezra and Lila worked through the night, their desks littered with coffee cups and scribbled notes. The tension was palpable, but so was something else. A current running between them, unspoken but undeniable. Every time their hands brushed, every time their eyes met, Ezra felt it. A pull, a question, a possibility. But what was Lila feeling? Was she fighting it, or was she as drawn to him as he was to her? At 3 a.m., with the team gone and the city asleep, Lila slumped in her chair, her face buried in her hands. "We're not going to make it," she muttered. "Nexus will tank us." Ezra knelt beside her, his heart pounding. "We'll make it," he said. "You've got the best team, Lila. You've got me." She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but fierce. "Why do you stay?" she asked, her voice raw. "Why do you keep coming back? No matter how much I push you away." Ezra swallowed, his throat tight. What could he say? That he saw her, really saw her, in a way no one else did? That he was falling for her, despite the distance she kept? "Because I believe in you," he said instead. "And I think you're worth it." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then, Lila reached out, her fingers grazing his cheek. The touch was electric, and Ezra froze, afraid to break the spell. What did that touch mean? Was it a moment of weakness or something more? "Lila," he whispered. But before he could say more, she pulled back, her face hardening. "We have work to do," she said, standing abruptly. But as she turned away, Ezra caught the tremble in her hands. She was shaken. Why? What was she so afraid of? The next morning, the team presented the revised campaign to Nexus. Lila was flawless, her voice commanding, her presence magnetic. The clients were impressed and the crisis was averted for now. But Ezra couldn't shake the memory of her touch, the way her fingers had lingered on his skin. What was she holding back? And how long could they keep dancing around it? That evening, Lila asked Ezra to meet her on the office rooftop. The air was cool, the city sprawling below them. She stood by the edge, her scarf fluttering in the wind. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice steady but soft. "I've been unfair to you." Ezra's heart raced. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "But I need to know. What's going on with you? Why do you keep me close but push me away?" Lila's eyes flickered with something raw, pain, maybe, or fear. "It's not about you," she said. "It's about me, who I am, what I can't be." What did she mean? Was it about her career, her reputation, or something deeper? Something about her identity, her heart? Ezra stepped closer, his voice gentle. "You can be whoever you want, Lila. You don't have to hide." She laughed, a bitter sound. "You make it sound so easy." Then softer. "You don't know what it's like, Ezra, to want something you can't have. To be someone you're not allowed to be." His chest tightened. Was she talking about them? Or was there more to her story? Something she hadn't shared? Before he could ask, she turned away, her silhouette stark against the skyline. "Go home," she said, her voice breaking. "Please." Ezra left, but her words echoed in his mind. What was Lila fighting? and how could he help her face it? Days passed, and the distance between Ezra and Lila grew, even as they worked side by side. She was professional, polished, but her eyes no longer met his. It was as if that night on the rooftop had never happened. But Ezra couldn't forget her words, her touch, the pain in her voice. What was she hiding? And why did it feel like she was slipping away? One afternoon, Ezra overheard a conversation in the break room. Two colleagues whispering about Lila. "She's always been private," one said. "But there's a rumor she's, not straight." The other laughed, dismissive. "No way. She's just married to her job." Ezra's stomach churned. Was that it? Was Lila struggling with her identity, afraid of what it meant in a world that judged so harshly? He wanted to confront her, to tell her it didn't matter, that he saw her for who she was. But how could he reach her when she kept him at arm's length? That night, Lila called him to her office again. The campaign was finalized, but she looked exhausted, her eyes hollow. "You did good work," she said, her voice flat. "You always do." "Lila," Ezra said, his voice urgent. "Talk to me, please. I know something's wrong." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "You don't give up, do you?" she said, almost smiling. Then, quieter, "I'm leaving, Ezra. I'm taking a job in New York." The words hit like a punch. "What? Why?" he asked, his voice cracking. Was she running from him? From herself? "It's better this way," she said, her eyes fixed on the floor. "I can't stay here. I can't be here." Ezra's mind raced. Was she leaving because of him? Because of what she felt? Or was it bigger than that? Bigger than both of them? "You don't have to run," he said, stepping closer. "Whatever it is, you can face it. With me." For the first time, Lila's eyes met his, and they were filled with tears. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I've spent my whole life hiding. From my family, from myself. I thought I could keep it buried. But then you," she stopped, her voice breaking. "Then me what?" Ezra pressed, his heart pounding. What was she admitting? Was it about her feelings for him or something deeper? "You make me want to be honest," she said, her voice barely audible. "But I'm not ready. I don't know if I'll ever be." Ezra reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't pull away. They stood there, the city humming below, their fingers intertwined. What did this moment mean? Was it a beginning or an end? The days before Lila's departure were a blur. Ezra threw himself into work, trying to drown out the ache in his chest. But every glance at her, every meeting, every late-night session, felt like a countdown. He wanted to fight for her, to make her stay. But how do you fight for someone who's running from themselves? One night, as the office emptied, Lila asked Ezra to meet her on the rooftop again. The air was heavy with the promise of rain, and Lila stood by the edge, her scarf fluttering. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice steady but soft. "Before I go." Ezra's heart raced. What was she about to say? Was this the moment everything would change? "I've never told anyone this," she began, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "I'm a lesbian, Ezra. I've known since I was a teenager, but I've spent my life pretending. For my family, for my career, for everyone." The words hung between them, heavy and liberating. Ezra felt a mix of relief and pain. Relief that she trusted him. Pain that she'd carried this alone for so long. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice gentle. "Because I was scared," she said, finally meeting his eyes. "And because I care about you, more than I should. It's why I kept you close, why I kept calling you back. But I couldn't let myself feel it. Not fully." Ezra's chest tightened. "You don't have to hide anymore," he said. "Not from me." She smiled, a sad, beautiful smile. "You're the first person who's ever made me feel like I could be myself," she said. "But I need to figure out who that is." Without you, without this place. They stood in silence, the city alive below them. Ezra wanted to hold her, to tell her he'd wait. But he knew this wasn't his story to write. What did she need now? Space? Support? Or just someone to see her, truly see her? I'm proud of you, he said finally. For being honest. For being you. Lila's eyes shimmered with tears, but she didn't look away. For the first time, she held his gaze, and it was like the world fell away. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me. She left for New York the next day. Ezra stood on the rooftop alone, the city sprawling before him, a mix of loss and hope in his heart. Lila had faced her truth, and in doing so, she'd given him something too. A reminder that love, in all its forms, was about seeing someone for who they are, even when they can't see themselves. What does it mean to love someone who's still finding their way? For Ezra, it meant letting Lila go, knowing that her journey was just beginning, and that, in some small way, he'd helped her take the first step.